Welcome back, everybody, to the Weekly Source. Super excited to have you and very excited for our guest today. We've got Dr. Jarik Conrad. He's the Senior Director, Human Insights, HCM Evangelism at the newly formed UKG. I'm still getting used to UKG, the ultimate Kronos Group. Yeah, you got to get all the swag and representing. But Dr. Conrad, thank you so much for joining us on the Weekly Source.
Oh, terrific. I'm glad to be here, Neil. Glad to be here.
For anybody who doesn't know of you or what you're doing, a quick introduction about yourself and what you're doing over at UKG.
So with the newly formed UKG, I lead our thought leadership and HR advisory group. So we are constantly thinking about the future of human resources. What trends are we seeing? Like, what's the worker of the future look like? What do they need? How do we meet their needs? So we're either producing content or delivering content or researching to try and figure out what type of content we need to produce. So
very cool. And that, I know, like I said, we had you out at Eclipse in Park City last year, and I know you're at the forefront of what's happening in the industry. Talk a bit about 2020 from your perspective.
Yeah, it's been really interesting for me. Because both of these, people call these the kind of the twin pandemics, the COVID pandemic, obviously, and then the issues that we're having with structural, racism, all that coming to a head. So I've been in the middle of both of these. And at the same time, I'm a parent who has two young kids who are right now in their virtual classrooms at home. So this has been very interesting to, writing about stuff that you're going through at the same time. So there's a little bit, I haven't spent this much time, with my family. We're still basically, locked down. We don't do much at all. So you got all these months where our whole family has been together and spent all this time. I think, a decade from now, we'll look back on this time, at least for my family, is while that was an opportunity for us to really, really get to know each other and watch our kids grow. So I try to find the positives during this difficult time.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And you even said you're doing an event last week or a couple of weeks ago, and you start, there's some scalability to it of getting your message out there and talking to folks in mass where maybe they wouldn't even have been able to get together in person. So there is some benefits there of getting the message to resonate. I guess now flipping it, you talk to some of the trends, I guess you're speaking to, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I started writing a book over a year ago, but everything in that book is going to look like that this is a reaction to COVID and what's going on with the protests in the streets. But actually, again, I started it a year ago. Some of this stuff you could foresee. Now, I couldn't foresee the pandemic. Of course, epidemiologists could, though. There were people who predicted we would go through something like this. But in terms of this, the structural racism, the systemic racism, people getting fed up with that, you could absolutely see it coming. So it has, like you said, it's put all the things that were happening kind of under the surface, is shown a spotlight on these things. And things are going to be moving at a much faster pace now because of where we are. So that's really interesting for us in that we're like, we've been talking about these things. Nobody believed us, and now people are like, well, what is that you said about affinity groups and ERG groups? What was that you said about how important we need to get some? So I think this is a great opportunity. If you're an HR professional and you've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you've been talking about things like empathy and understanding each other, all those things that as HR professionals, we sometimes had a hard time convincing leadership of. Now people are listening.
That's a great point. Yeah, now's the time to invoke or enact change. So you mentioned the project. Talk a bit, I guess, about, I believe it's called Insert Humanity. Some of the elements that are going into it. What do you feel like is resonating now as this is a work in progress and you're building it out?
I already felt like humanity was coming to a crossroads. We have, incredible technology that enable us to just at the snap of our fingers, we can, our houses are, smart. We can get so many things done with this incredible technology that we have. Yet we still have these very antiquated skills in some ways. Our wiring is still much like it was back on the African savannas. So we're trying to function in a very modern world with a set of skills and competencies that were really more fit for back then. And so it's interesting when you think about things like tribalism, for instance. Well, tribalism was necessary for survival back on the African savannas, right? We needed to be able to very quickly, visually start to recognize who is with me, who is like me. If you're like me, I'm more likely to be safe with you, right? So this was a mechanism, that was really part of our brain to help ensure our survival. And so something like tribalism, which is probably, the reason we still are here, the human beings are here, it is the same thing that gets us into trouble when it comes to understanding people from different backgrounds, different experiences. So those brain mechanics, we need to understand them better and try to figure out how to re-equip them for modern life.
So to break down whether it's barriers or emerging tribes, and you've often talked, or at least when we spoke last week, about shared experiences, common ground. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you feel like different tribes can use that as a means to come together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're wired for these shared experiences, right? You see somebody with your team logo on their sweatshirt, you want to say something to them, right? We long for those commonalities, right? The challenge is that so much of this is based on what we see. And so we have this default mechanism in our brain, again, that says if that person looks like me, they're more likely to be in my tribe. We may have some shared experiences. When in reality, if you sit down and talk with people, you might have some shared experiences with someone who doesn't look like you. You might have even more shared experiences with them. The problem is we don't necessarily have enough opportunities in society to make those connections so we can sit down and we can talk about our background, so we can find out what those shared experiences are. So unless we intentionally go out to try and form these connections, we're leaving ourselves very vulnerable.
Yeah, fascinating. I think there's something to be said for either stepping out of comfort zone or being diligent about, meeting somebody you aren't typically used to, or it's not in your tribe kind of thing. I mean, I feel like that will definitely resonate.
Yeah.
So we've got a good portion of our audience, HR professionals, right? They're gearing up for probably the biggest season. You mentioned the sports analogy of the year and open enrollment. I mean, what's your parting message or call to action to them?
Yeah, I think for HR professionals, we did a study a couple of years ago where we talked about the future of HR, and the sentiment was that HR, we want to change, right? We want to be more value added, quote unquote, more strategic, but there just hadn't been any impetus. There hadn't been any defining moment, right? Any precipitating moment for us to make that change. I think 2020 is that precipitating moment. If you're an HR professional, now is the time to sit back and say, wait a minute, we were living in a way, operating in a way that was unsustainable, right? Now is the time for us to step back and really redefine what HR is all about. So absolutely, we have to handle things like benefits enrollment and all those very important things, but we got to step back and really get into the people sciences more, right? Understanding what the value of those benefits are, more deeply. How do we customize things that meet people where they are in the evolution of their career and their lives? So it's really time for HR to step back. We've quote unquote asked for a seat at the table. That's got to be over with. We got to be calling the meeting like this is our table.
Right, right.
Come to this meeting and let's figure out how we can move our employees down the road, because if we can move them down the road, they're going to take care of our customers and obviously our businesses will do well. So I hope HR professionals don't miss this opportunity.
I love that, Dr. Conrad. I really appreciate you stopping by today. Powerful messages. Really looking forward to seeing the finished product of your book. I'm sure it will be, yeah. So many hoops you still got to jump through, but I know the message will be timely if and when it's finally published. But thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll link to Dr. Conrad's profile below. You can follow him. But we'll see you all next time on the Weekly Source. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Neil. Take care, everybody.